In the distance, Qingtan was being relentlessly pressured by the yellow-robed Supreme, continuously retreating. However, she firmly guarded Lin Dong, who remained with his eyes tightly shut, his expression twisted in pain. The primordial energy and spiritual energy within his body were clashing violently, leaving his internal state in complete chaos. Suddenly, a sharp cry rang out through the heavens and earth. Upon hearing the voice, Qingtan's figure trembled violently. She knew that the sound just now was from Ling Qingzhu. The next moment, the scene of Wu Liang Ancestor desecrating Ling Qingzhu flashed before Qingtan's eyes. "You bastards!" Qingtan roared in fury. A mouthful of fresh blood sprayed from Lin Dong's mouth, and his aura immediately weakened to its utmost. Watching this, the panic in Qingtan's expression deepened, turning into sheer terror. Lin Dong's spiritual energy was much more turbulent than expected. If Lin Dong failed, there would be no need for Wu Liang Ancestor and the others to strike. He would either die or be left utterly crippled. Tears streamed down Qingtan's face, and a sobbing wail of despair escaped her lips. "Brother Lin Dong, please save Sister Qingzhu. She's your woman." Just as despair was consuming her heart, a wave of invisible, pure light suddenly emanated from Lin Dong's body. As the light spread, the two chaotic energies within him began to calm down. This invisible light was none other than the power of the Supreme Deity, hidden within Lin Dong's body. This power of the Supreme Deity had the ability to harmonize the energies of the lower dimensions and the spiritual energy of the Great Thousand Worlds. As Lin Dong's face gradually softened, the panic in Qingtan's expression was replaced by wild joy. Just as Qingtan was elated at the improvement in Lin Dong's situation, a terrifying explosion suddenly shook the heavens and earth from behind. The seven supreme powerhouses who had been attacking Qingtan and Lin Dong abruptly stopped their assault. All eyes turned towards the source of the explosion. A tremendous blast engulfed the surrounding 1,000 miles, and a sea of fire spread across the sky, twisting the very space itself. The energies of the heavens and earth were collapsing, and in that very spot stood Wu Liang Ancestor and Ling Qingzhu. Sizzle! A figure was blasted out of the sea of flames, and when everyone saw who it was, they froze in shock. It was none other than Wu Liang Ancestor. Wu Liang Ancestor had been sent flying by the terrifying shockwave, landing over 1,000 miles away in a frozen land. He crashed into the icy ground, shattering nearly a third of it. The scene was nothing short of visually stunning. As the smoke and dust from the explosion slowly cleared, a fierce and cold expression appeared on the face of Ling Qingzhu. Around her, only 7 ancestral talismans remained. The flame ancestral talisman had already disappeared. Everyone gasped in disbelief. No one had expected that this stunning woman, having been touched by Wu Liang Ancestor earlier, would go insane and detonate an ancestral talisman. The terrifying explosion, powerful enough to heavily injure a 4th-grade Supreme, was caused by the detonation of the flame ancestral talisman. Chunks of ice scattered across the sky, rapidly melting under the overwhelming flames. The entire area was enveloped in searing steam. Wu Liang Ancestor was embedded into the deep sea by the shockwave. Moments later, a muffled roar rang out as a massive gray water column shot up from the ocean, reaching the heavens. All eyes were drawn to the towering gray water column. As it expanded, it dispersed in all directions, sending giant waves crashing across the ocean. A figure with torn clothes emerged from the water. Wu Liang Ancestor brushed the dust off his body and looked at his tattered robes. Despite the destruction, his body was only lightly scratched. With a helpless sigh, he looked up at Ling Qingzhu in midair. Wu Liang Ancestor had not anticipated that the detonation of the talisman would generate such a terrifying force. If an ordinary 4th-grade Supreme had taken the full brunt of the explosion, they would surely be gravely injured. But Wu Liang Ancestor was no ordinary 4th-grade Supreme. "It seems the strongest one here is not that young man, but you," Wu Liang Ancestor said with a faint smile, eyeing Ling Qingzhu, whose face still burned with fury. "But I've had my fun." From afar, The crowd of onlookers in the sky gasped in shock when they saw that Wu Liang Ancestor had emerged unscathed from the terrifying explosion. Faced with an attack powerful enough to severely injure a 4th-grade Supreme, only someone as formidable as Wu Liang Ancestor, a top-tier 5th-grade Supreme, could maintain such composure. At that moment, a booming sound echoed from a distance, followed by a massive shockwave sweeping across the heavens and earth. The sky seemed to be shrouded in smoke and dust. Amid the swirling dust, a slender figure wielding a giant scythe was ejected, and the dust in front of her was instantly dispersed by a terrifying force. A figure dressed in yellow robes also shot forward, rushing out from the smoke. Qing Tan continued to flee, with Lin Dong, who was undergoing spiritual energy fusion, just a few thousand zhang behind. The man in yellow took a step forward, and a vast vortex of spiritual energy formed behind him. The spiritual energy from the surrounding heaven and earth rushed towards him, merging into a massive shadow thousands of zhang tall. Every movement of the man in yellow was mirrored by the shadow behind him. This was the Supreme Dharmakaya, a legendary energy body formed by a supreme powerhouse. It embodied immense offensive and defensive power, and was a direct manifestation of a supreme strength. This is... Qing Tan stared at the enormous figure ahead, her face filled with shock. She could feel a destructive force emanating from that figure. Just as Qing Tan was stunned, the man in yellow slowly raised his hand, fingers clenched into a fist. In the next moment, he unleashed a devastating blow, and the giant figure behind him also threw a punch at Qing Tan. Damn it! Qing Tan clenched her teeth, and in the next instant, a black talisman flew out from her body. She struck out with her palm towards the dark ancestral talisman. Qing Tan was attempting to follow in Ling Qingzhu's footsteps and detonate the talisman. Naive. The man in yellow sneered coldly when he saw Qing Tan trying to detonate the talisman to stop him. Figures began to emerge from behind the yellow-robed Supreme, heading straight for Lin Dong, who was in the midst of spiritual energy fusion. Qing Tan, preoccupied with the yellow-robed man, had forgotten that he had at least 6 other Supreme-level experts with him. Seeing the 6 figures emerging from the void, Qing Tan's face changed drastically. She moved to intercept them, but just as she did, the space ahead twisted, and the yellow-robed Supreme appeared once again. "Get out of my way!" Qing Tan roared, her eyes bloodshot with fury. In the next moment, without hesitation, she bit down on her finger, releasing a spray of blood directly onto the dark ancestral talisman. "Heh, you're not a Supreme!" The yellow-robed man mocked as he gently raised his palm and aimed it at Qing Tan. With a single strike from the yellow-robed man, the Supreme Dharmakaya behind him also slammed down towards Qing Tan. The immense force caused the space itself to warp. "With your 3 tribulation strength, even if you detonate that talisman, I will have no fear." The words rang in Qing Tan's mind like a bomb, making her realize that the power Ling Qingzhu had exhibited when detonating the fire ancestral talisman was because she had already reached the Supreme realm. Only someone at the Supreme level could bridge the gap between power levels. Beneath the Supreme, everyone is but an ant. 6 figures with cruel smiles lunged toward Lin Dong, who was in the center of the massive formation. The 6 Supremes formed hand seals, and the vast, surging spiritual energy behind them created enormous vortices. Their massive figures appeared in the world, their steps shaking the heavens and earth. Although they were all at the Supreme level, Lin Dong had previously defeated 2 second-grade Supremes and 2 third-grade Supremes, while undergoing spiritual energy and primordial energy fusion. Even though Lin Dong was currently in a critical fusion state, the dangerous fluctuations still emanated from him, causing the 6 Supremes to hesitate. This young man was too dangerous for them. A spatial prison formed, trapping the somewhat crazed Qing Tan inside. Despite her frantic attempts to slash with her black scythe, she couldn't break free. Wu Liang Ancestor threw a punch toward the void. In front of him, a deep blue talisman shot forward, colliding with the void punch and the thunder ancestral talisman. In the next moment, countless bolts of lightning surged like a tidal wave, sweeping across the surrounding space, eroding the very fabric of the void for miles. A deafening explosion rang out, shaking the heavens and earth. After the Flame Ancestral Talisman, the Thunder Ancestral Talisman was also detonated by Ling Qingzhu. However, this power still couldn't stop Wu Yang Ancestor. A glimmer of despair appeared in Ling Qingzhu's eyes as she watched the 6 colossal figures charging toward Lin Dong from a distance. Under such power, even a 4th grade supreme would not remain unharmed. Ling Qingzhu bit her red lips, staring at Wu Yang Ancestor, who stood in her way. A sense of compromise began to surface in her heart. Oh. Ling Qingzhu's hoarse voice began to speak, but just as she was about to agree to leave with Wu Yang Ancestor and demand Lin Dong's life be spared, a thunderous roar suddenly reverberated across the heavens and earth. How dare a strong being from the great 1,000 worlds greet these lower beings in such a manner? What a slap in the face. In the sky, 2 enormous figures collided with a loud crash, sending a massive wave of spiritual power spreading outward. The aftermath of the battle between the 2 5th grade supremes caused the space for miles around to become extremely unstable. Who are you? Wu Yang Ancestor asked, his face grim as he stared at the young man in black before him. However, the young man, Xiang Xiang, seemed to have not heard Wu Yang Ancestor's words. The overwhelming spiritual power behind him transformed into a massive wall-like wave, surging upward to several thousand meters. This tidal wave of energy quickly became a vast storm of spiritual arrows, numbering in the tens of thousands. Each arrow was over 100 feet long, and the fluctuations emanating from them were enough to shake even a 2nd or 3rd grade supreme. If such a barrage of spiritual arrows were to strike all at once, even a peak 4th grade supreme would have no choice but to retreat. The spiritual arrows rained down from the sky, enveloping Wu Yang Ancestor's supreme Dharmakaya. The sheer might of the assault made the very heavens tremble. I fear you not. Wu Yang Ancestor's deep voice echoed. His hands swiftly formed complex hand seals, and as he did, the spiritual energy of the surrounding heavens began to stir. The spiritual energy within 1,000 miles surged toward his supreme Dharmakaya. Feel the power of my self-created divine art. Endless waves of spiritual energy gathered on the palm of Wu Yang Ancestor's supreme Dharmakaya. With a mighty slam of his hand, a colossal palm of boundless spiritual power was launched, meeting the oncoming storm of spiritual arrows head-on. Boundless seal. A massive gray hand, about 1,000 feet in size, shattered the void as it slammed into the thousands of spiritual arrows that rained down upon him. The impact was so great that it caused the surrounding space to crack and shatter. While Xiang Xiang and Wu Yang Ancestor were locked in a fierce battle, several other battle zones stretched across the horizon. Waves of terrifying spiritual energy surged from these zones, catching the attention of countless figures beyond the far-off skies. But aside from the epic clash between Wu Yang Ancestor and Xiang Xiang, there was one more scene that drew the most attention. Above the thundering skies, dark clouds filled with lightning swirled as a delicate figure darted through the air. In Ling Qingzhu's hands, a stone tablet, no bigger than a palm, flew out, swelling rapidly. In an instant, it grew into a colossal brown stone slab nearly 10,000 feet tall. The moment it surged downward, it aimed to crush the 2 figures below. The force emanating from it was so overwhelming that even a typical 2nd grade supreme would not dare to face it directly. The Great Wilderness Monument, now within the Great 1,000 Worlds, moved with ease as though it were a fish in water. All the constraints of the lower dimensions had long been lifted. Its power here was far beyond what it had been in the lower realm. Even in the Great 1,000 Worlds, such an artifact could only be considered a divine artifact. In the Great 1,000 Worlds, the power of divine artifacts was beyond imagination. However, Ling Qingzhu knew that facing 2 3rd grade supremes, the Great Wilderness Monument alone would not be enough to suppress them. A brown-yellow talisman shot out from her body, merging with the Great Wilderness Monument like a streak of light. Now that Lin Dong no longer required the vast spiritual energy, Ling Qingzhu had no further concerns. The primordial ancestral talisman fused with the Great Wilderness Monument. This already powerful divine artifact expanded once again, swelling to a size of tens of thousands of feet in an instant, creating an overwhelming visual impact. A more terrifying wave of energy, even stronger than before, surged from the great wilderness monument. This was the true desolate power. The vast, sky-covering monument immediately descended, aiming to suppress the two third-grade supreme beings below. As the great wilderness monument pressed down, the space within the battle circle collapsed deeply. The power unleashed was comparable to a full-force strike from a third-grade supreme. This was one of Ling Qingzhu's most powerful moves, second only to the detonation of the ancestral talisman. These lower-dimension beings are too dangerous. If we don't eliminate them today, they will be a great threat in the future. The two supremes looked at the massive stone tablet falling from the sky, their expressions filled with solemnity. They exchanged a glance and immediately understood what must be done. Two gigantic whirlpools of spiritual energy spread out behind them, and from within, two towering figures, each thousands of feet tall, emerged. As they manifested their supreme dharmakayas, the two supreme beings began shifting the hand seals they held. Black Heaven Grand Wheel. Primordial Divine Transformation Technique. Deep, resonant voices echoed from their mouths. One supreme dharmakaya clenched its fingers into a fist, sending out a massive punch. The raging spiritual energy converged into a black crescent, thousands of feet wide, that tore through space and shot toward the great wilderness monument. The other supreme dharmakaya struck with an open palm. A blinding white light surged forward, transforming into a radiant imprint that was no less powerful than the black crescent. The black and white attacks collided fiercely as they hurtled toward the descending great wilderness monument. With a tremendous crash, the two enormous light figures collided with the monument, sending a radiant explosion that stretched for hundreds of thousands of feet. The shockwave of their clash surged outward, rippling through the surrounding space, shattering the ice and snow beneath, creating massive cracks. Boom! The gigantic black-backed explosion erupted, and the terrifying force pushed the great wilderness monument back. The space behind it collapsed under the impact, and finally, the monument could not withstand the destructive force. It shattered into two glowing fragments, each the size of a human head, flying backward. Ling Qingzhu's full-force strike, though slightly weaker than the demon monument used by the alien demon emperor when he sacrificed most of the demon clan, was still enough to rival a third-grade supreme's full-power attack. Yet, it was still stopped by the two supremes before her. Swish! The two massive supreme dharmakayas burst out of the smoke and dust, and with a single punch, they attacked Ling Qingzhu. The force of their strikes twisted the very fabric of space. As long as Ling Qingzhu didn't detonate another talisman, the two men had no reason to fear her. Ling Qingzhu gritted her teeth and quickly retreated. From a distance, Qing Tan saw Ling Qingzhu in such a precarious situation. Her fists clenched tightly as she looked at Lin Dong, who was still only a breath away from his limit. The ice ancestral talisman flew out of Ling Qingzhu's body. As white light flared, it transformed into a massive ice barrier, blocking her path. Behind the ice wall, the two enormous figures were already closing in. Two massive fists, carrying terrifying power, slammed into the ice barrier. As cracks spread, the entire barrier shattered. When the ice wall broke, countless bolts of lightning shot out, striking the two supreme dharmakayas with lightning speed. The purest form of thunder power began to erode their bodies upon contact. However, due to Ling Qingzhu's spiritual energy being far weaker than the third-grade supremes, the thunder only caused temporary damage before it was violently repelled. Meanwhile, at several other locations, the shockwave from the terrifying collision sent both Wu Liang Ancestor and Xiang Xiang reeling. Who is this person? Wu Liang Ancestor's expression darkened as he realized that the young man before him was just as strong as he was, even sensing that the young man still hid some of his power. He hadn't even used his full strength in their battle, which was something Wu Liang could not accept. He also understood that this group of people was clearly stalling for time to aid the person from the lower dimension who was undergoing spiritual energy assimilation. That individual must be approaching the final stages of assimilation. I guess you're wondering why I have the power to defeat you, yet I'm only delaying you? Xiang Xiang, standing not far away, looked at Wu Liang Ancestor's solemn face and smiled. Hearing this, Wu Liang Ancestor's expression changed dramatically. A loud shout erupted from his mouth, and it reverberated through the heavens and earth. Everyone, the situation is no longer in our favor. The resounding shout of Wu Liang Ancestor echoed outward, causing a tremor in the hearts of the 7 supreme powerhouses locked in battle. None of them had expected that before they had any intention of retreating, Wu Liang Ancestor would be the first to signal a retreat. All present gritted their teeth in frustration. Since Wu Liang Ancestor was already preparing to retreat, continuing the fight was pointless. They immediately channeled their spiritual energy wildly, unleashing a series of divine techniques to force their opponents back. Once their adversaries were repelled, they surged toward Wu Liang Ancestor with explosive speed. After narrowly evading 2 terrifying attacks, Ling Qingzhu glanced at the 2 retreating third-grade Supremes with a hint of astonishment, then finally let out a sigh of relief. Among the 7 supreme powerhouses under Wu Liang Ancestor, 4 figures wore dark expressions, glaring furiously at Ling Qingzhu and her allies. Their hearts were filled with unwillingness. Earlier, they had been soundly beaten by Lin Dong, and now Wu Liang Ancestor intended to retreat. This was a humiliation they could hardly swallow. Damn it! A man in a yellow robe suddenly turned and charged toward Ling Qingzhu with explosive speed. As a vortex of spiritual energy formed around him, a massive supreme Dharmakaya materialized. The yellow-robed Supreme pushed his spiritual energy to the limit, and with intricate seals forming in his hands, his supreme Dharmakaya surged forward, its massive fist swinging down toward Ling Qingzhu. Seeing the yellow-robed man's sudden attack, Ling Qingzhu's expression changed again. Her figure flickered as she prepared to retreat. At that moment, a silver glow burst forth from the sky behind Ling Qingzhu. The radiance froze the surrounding heavens and earth, transforming the space into an enormous, immobilizing prison. From afar, Xiang Xiang witnessed the astonishing scene, a faint smile appearing on his face. His gaze shifted from Lin Dong in the distance to Wu Liang Ancestor, and a calm voice left his lips. "You're finished." As Xiang Xiang's words rang out, Wu Liang Ancestor's expression darkened. His eyes turned toward a colossal formation in the distance. The formation slowly contracted, with 8 runes flying into the body of a seated young man. In the next instant, an overwhelming azure light erupted from the youth, transforming into countless dragon patterns, numbering over 1,000,000. Nearby, Qingtan's face lit up with joy. She watched as the young man opened his eyes, and in a flash, his entire figure vanished. The enormous Supreme Dharmakaya's fist was hurtling toward Ling Qingzhu. Just as she was about to dodge, a figure shrouded in azure light shot forth from behind her. Without hesitation, the figure faced the colossal Supreme Dharmakaya, expressionless as it threw a punch. The yellow-robed man's face twisted in terror at the sight of the azure figure piercing through the void. His eyes widened as though he had seen a demon, and a horrified voice escaped his lips. How is this possible? Before the yellow-robed man could finish his exclamation, the azure figure's punch had already landed on the Supreme Dharmakaya. The countless gazes in the sky turned blank at the scene, and even Xiang Xiang's face stiffened slightly. Cracks spread rapidly across the Supreme Dharmakaya before it shattered into countless fragments, scattering across the sky. All eyes were drawn to the azure figure standing in the void, then shifted to the fragments of the Supreme Dharmakaya. Gasps echoed through the heavens. To destroy a third-grade Supreme's Dharmakaya with mere physical strength, what kind of terrifying body refinement was this? Even Wu Liang Ancestor, watching from a distance, was shaken by the scene. Xiang Xiang's gaze landed on Lin Dong, his entire form glowing with azure light. A smirk tugged at his lips. Stronger than I expected. Fragments of the Supreme Dharmakaya rained down from the heavens. The yellow-robed man spat a mouthful of blood, his face a mask of terror as he stared at the black-clad youth radiating azure light. The Supreme Dharmakaya, which he had cultivated for decades, had crumbled like paper before this youth. An overwhelming sense of fear consumed the yellow-robed man, his entire body trembling. Ignoring the severe injuries caused by the destruction of his supreme Dharmakaya, he frantically pushed his spiritual energy to retreat while shouting desperately, "Wu Liang, save me!" Before his voice could finish echoing, his face twisted further into panic. The Azure figure, which had been in front of him just moments ago, had vanished. The next instant, the space before him twisted, and the expressionless figure materialized. The brilliant blue light erupted from the youth's body, transforming into hundreds of thousands of dragon patterns that swirled around him. Lin Dong's fist, carrying an immense power, silently slammed into the chest of the man in the yellow robe. The man's face twisted in agony as he took the hit. Under the weight of this simple punch, the yellow-robed man didn't even have time to scream before his entire body was reduced to a mist of blood and scattered flesh, filling the air with a terrifying, grotesque spectacle. "Stop! Don't kill me! Please!" A soul-like light shadow shot out from the sea of dismembered body parts, screeching in fury as it pierced the sky, heading straight for the Wu Liang Ancestor and others. This was the soul of the Great Thousand World. From a distance, Wu Liang Ancestor and the others were struck with astonishment, but before they could take any action, a deep, intense black light burst from the far distance. A vast, pitch-black rift appeared across the sky, resembling a giant mouth that devoured the yellow-robed man's soul. He didn't even manage to utter a single scream. A shocked murmur spread through the surroundings. What a ruthless method! Behind Xiang Xiang, a man in black gasped as he watched Lin Dong annihilate the third-grade supreme in an instant. The fact that Lin Dong had left no trace of the soul behind was a display of extreme ruthlessness, an act that left the black-clad man chilled to the bone. Turning his head to Xiang Xiang, he spoke, "Young master, this? Haha, the Great Thousand Alliance needs such people." Xiang Xiang smiled lightly. Upon hearing this, the man in black remained silent. "Brat." From midair, Wu Liang Ancestor glared at the figure of blue light, walking slowly from the devouring dark space. His face twisted with rage. A third-grade supreme coming from their side was a top-tier combatant, yet now he was killed instantly by a mere person from a lower dimension. The loss was colossal. "Old man, it's your turn now. Don't worry, I won't interfere." Xiang Xiang's voice suddenly echoed in Wu Liang Ancestor's ears. "Humph. How strong can a low-level dimension person be, who's just completed spiritual energy assimilation?" That guy died because he underestimated his opponent. Behind Wu Liang Ancestor, one of his allies, a fourth-grade supreme, took a step forward and shot toward Lin Dong in the distance. Clang! A silver spear appeared in the fourth-grade supreme's hand, crackling with overwhelming spiritual energy. A sharp spear shadow ripped through the air, tearing apart the fabric of space itself as it flew toward Lin Dong. The terrifying power was so immense that even the space around it tore open into a pitch-black rift. The spear shadow tore through the sky in an instant, arriving at Lin Dong's front. However, just as the massive spear shadow was about to strike Lin Dong, the fourth-grade Supreme's expression froze. The enormous spear shadow seemed to cut Lin Dong in two, but as the two halves of his body began to split apart, Lin Dong's form wavered and vanished, leaving only an afterimage. From afar, Ling Qingzhu watched as Lin Dong's figure reappeared in front of her, standing firm. "Are you all right?" Ling Qingzhu's slightly reproachful look made Lin Dong realize that something had definitely happened just now. "I'm fine." Ling Qingzhu shook her head slightly, deepening Lin Dong's confusion. Just as Lin Dong was about to voice his confusion, the space around him rippled, and a faint voice echoed in his ears, causing his expression to darken. "Your wife has been humiliated. Do you have anything to say?" Xiang Xiang's voice, calm and detached, exploded in Lin Dong's ears like a bomb. A surge of killing intent erupted from Lin Dong's body, overwhelming his entire being. A graceful figure shot toward him from afar. It was Qing Tan. She appeared in front of Lin Dong, raising her delicate hand and pointing toward the distant Wu Liang Ancestor. It was that old man who dared to mess with Sister Qingzhu. Qing Tan's voice, icy with fury, rang out. As her words reached Lin Dong's ears, his eyes slowly closed. The entire world around them darkened. "I understand," Lin Dong's calm voice echoed, chilling everyone around him. They had expected him to erupt in anger upon hearing this, but his tranquil reaction was completely beyond their expectations. However, only those who knew Lin Dong the best, Ling Qingzhu and Qing Tan, could sense an overwhelming, invisible killing intent emanating from his expressionless body. In the distance, Xiang Xiang's brow twitched slightly, while Wu Liang Ancestor, on the other hand, furrowed his brow. Suddenly, the space above them twisted, and a figure materialized in the air. The vast, surging spiritual energy erupted from this figure. It was one of Wu Liang Ancestor's subordinates, a 4th grade supreme. After Lin Dong dodged his earlier attack, the man had been ignored, which made him feel belittled. As a dignified supreme powerhouse, how could he swallow this humiliation? The man unleashed his spiritual energy without reservation. The force was so mighty that even any strong cultivator below the 4th grade supreme would be intimidated. A black light flashed from his hand, and a black spear, nearly a yard long, materialized in his grip. The countless eyes around them focused on the weapon. It was a low-grade divine artifact. In Lin Dong's dimension, a low-grade divine artifact was considered to be among the 10 divine artifacts. The black spear radiated a sharpness capable of rending space, and the man's 4th grade supreme power allowed him to wield this low-grade divine artifact to its full potential. Let me see what you lower-dimensional beings are capable of. With a low shout, the man swept the spear at Lin Dong. The overwhelming spiritual energy transformed into a massive, 1,000 zhang, about 3,000 meters, spear shadow, crashing toward Lin Dong. The force of this strike was powerful enough to slay a 3rd grade supreme. The 1,000 zhang spear shadow tore through the sky, rushing toward Lin Dong. In response, Lin Dong slowly raised his palm, and a small, palm-sized mini-divine palace appeared in his hand. As he moved, the palace expanded rapidly, growing into a gigantic divine hall that floated high in the sky. A divine artifact. The man's face shifted with shock upon seeing the enormous palace summoned by Lin Dong. From it, he felt an aura that was no weaker than the black spear in his hand. A divine artifact's unique aura. Clearly, the palace Lin Dong had summoned was also a low-grade divine artifact. Around them, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. To think that this breakthrough cultivator from a lower dimension would wield a divine artifact right off the bat. He truly lived up to the reputation of a being from a super dimension. Before the man could fully recover from his shock, the giant spear shadow had already slammed into the massive palace. A terrifying wave of spiritual energy spread outward, sweeping across the land, as rolling dust clouds enveloped the area for miles. When the dust finally cleared, the man's pupils contracted. There, floating in the sky, was the palace, completely undamaged. His full-force strike had only pushed the palace back a few thousand zhang, but had not left a scratch on it. Indeed, it's a divine artifact, the man muttered under his breath. The massive palace loomed in the sky, radiating an imposing aura. It was the unique pressure of a divine artifact, the same aura as the Xintian Palace, ranked 10th among the ancient divine artifacts of Lin Dong's super dimension. Using such a thing as a shield is a waste. Xiang Xiang, watching from a distance, couldn't help but comment. But was Lin Dong really going to use this divine palace to block his opponent's attacks? Far away, Lin Dong stood in the air, expressionless, watching the stunned figure before him. His lips curled slightly as a faint voice reached the ears of Ling Qingzhu and Qing Tan behind him. Go into the Xintian Palace. The two women exchanged a glance before nodding. They understood. The ensuing battle might be incredibly destructive, and Lin Dong didn't want them to be caught in the crossfire. Entering the Xintian Palace was obviously safer than retreating far away. In an instant, their figures shot through the air at incredible speed, crossing the sky in just a few breaths to reach the giant gates of the Xintian Palace. As the great doors slowly opened, they turned back to glance at Lin Dong. Though still worried, they had always believed in Lin Dong's ability to create miracles. Despite how dire the situation seemed, they trusted that Lin Dong had a way to handle it. With no more hesitation, they dashed into the palace, and the great doors slowly closed behind them. From a distance, Lin Dong saw that Ling Qingzhu and Qing Tan had entered the Xintian palace. He extended his hand toward the distant palace, and it slowly began to rotate and shrink. Two beams of light swiftly shot over from the distance. One was a stone tablet, and the other, a stone talisman. These were none other than the Great Wilderness Monument and the Ancestral Stone. The two divine artifacts hovered around Lin Dong, and as their radiance scattered, they transformed into two figures. These were the spirits of the divine artifacts, the very essence of the great thousand worlds' sacred relics. Several more rays of light erupted from within Lin Dong's body, shooting outwards. First, a silver-colored spear appeared. This was the Void Spear, ranked fourth on the divine artifact ranking. Next, a jade disc and a black scythe materialized. These were the Doomsday Celestial Disc and the Dark Sacred Scythe. Colors of light emanated from these divine artifacts, and to Lin Dong's surprise, they all transformed into human-like figures one after another. All of them were the spirits of sacred items. Including the Great Wilderness Monument and the Ancestral Stone, there were now 5 divine artifacts, which meant 5 sacred relics. According to the ancient divine artifact ranking of Lin Dong's dimension, apart from the dimension embryo, which wasn't considered a true artifact, only these top 10 items could be regarded as true divine artifacts in the Great Thousand Worlds. A commotion erupted throughout the surrounding heavens and earth. Previously, Ling Qingzhu had already caused a stir by summoning both the Great Wilderness Monument and the Ancestral Stone, 2 mid-grade divine artifacts, simultaneously. After all, sacred artifacts were treasures that could serve as the cornerstone of a clan in the Great Thousand Worlds. With these 2 mid-grade divine artifacts, Ling Qingzhu had been able to contend with a 3rd-grade Supreme despite only recently advancing to 1st-grade Supreme. This showcased the immense power of mid-grade divine artifacts. But now, Lin Dong had summoned 5 divine artifacts at once. Can any of you fight? Lin Dong's calm voice reached the ears of the 5 divine artifact spirits. No problem. As long as we're not completely destroyed, you can help us repair ourselves, replied the spirit of the Doomsday Celestial Disc, glancing at the increasingly serious Wu Liang Ancestor and others in the distance. The other artifact spirits nodded in agreement. Lin Dong, his expression unchanging, slowly raised his head and looked at the distant Wu Liang Ancestor. He flipped his hand, and a lightning staff, about a foot long, materialized in his palm. The entire world began to tremble, dark clouds rapidly gathering in the sky. Then, a cascade of dazzling tears of light broke through the thick clouds, falling to the ground. From a distance, Xiang Xiang watched the surrounding sky, a hint of excitement appearing on his face. The entire world seemed to be on the verge of an apocalypse. Then, he heard Lin Dong's stern voice, which echoed throughout the heavens and earth. Break the weak, kill the old. The bodies of the 2 divine souls were destroyed, and they fled in panic, rushing towards the distant sky. Despite the escape of the 2 3rd-grade Supreme Divine Souls, the Azure Dragon paid them no heed. Its 2 gigantic eyes turned savage. Transforming into the Azure Dragon with the sky-transforming dragon art, Lin Dong locked his gaze on the distant Wu Liang Ancestor. His previously calm face now twisted with fury. With a roar, his voice echoed throughout the world. Die! Countless Azure Dragon runes surged out from the body of the Azure Dragon, and in a matter of moments, hundreds of thousands of dragon runes soared into the sky, flooding the heavens. The runes continued to emerge from the Azure Dragon's body, growing in number under Wu Liang Ancestor's horrified gaze. With a roar, Lin Dong's figure shook, and the space around him cracked open with numerous fissures. The Azure Dragon hurtled forward, tearing through the sky and directly appearing in front of Wu Liang Ancestor. As it roared, a massive dragon claw, carrying 200,000 dragon runes, slammed towards Wu Liang Ancestor. Azure Dragon Celestial Seal. Only this person, Lin Dong, was someone he did not want to leave alive. You want to kill me? Not so easily. The voice of Wu Liang Ancestor rang out in fury, and a torrent of gray, spiritual energy erupted from his body. The space around them trembled. At this moment, The once composed Wu Liang ancestor was visibly darkened inside. His initial confidence had now evaporated. Today, they had already paid too high a price for offending this individual. Originally, there had been 7 supreme powerhouses. After just one confrontation, 6 of them had perished. Wu Liang ancestor now realized just how terrifying a person he had provoked, and it was too late for regret. 6,000 grand seals. The overwhelming gray spiritual energy transformed into an ancient, towering seal in the sky, exuding a terrifying wave of power, one that even 5th-grade Supremes would feel a sense of fear from. Facing Lin Dong now, Wu Liang ancestor could no longer hold back. The 6,000 grand seals had been acquired from a relic of the Earth Supreme, and it was a true divine art. Boom! The ancient seal swept across the sky, colliding violently with the Azure Dragon celestial seal. The terrifying shockwave of spiritual energy instantly collapsed the space within 1,000 miles. Impossible! Impossible! The ancient giant seal, powerful enough to kill a 5th-grade Supreme, was cracked under the pressure of the Azure Dragon's claws. The crack spread across the seal, and then, with a crushing grip, the Azure Dragon's claws shattered the ancient seal. A mouthful of blood spurted from Wu Liang ancestor's mouth. Leave me no choice. Then die. The Azure Dragon's claws tore through the void. After smashing the 6,000 grand seal that Wu Liang ancestor had cast, they directly slammed into him. With Ling Qingzhu defiled, Lin Dong's fury was unimaginable. With a heavy thud that echoed through the heavens and earth, the crowd watched as a blood-soaked figure shot backward like a bird with broken wings, tearing across the icy land and creating a massive rift on the sea that stretched for thousands of miles. Every eye and every figure in the surrounding heavens and earth drew in a cold breath. That figure was none other than Wu Liang ancestor, struck by Lin Dong's palm, and grievously injured in a single blow. The once calm sea surface now roiled with massive waves after Wu Liang ancestor's fall. A colossal water column shot up into the sky, and a battered figure, desperate and disheveled, erupted from it, streaking toward the distant horizon. Devoid of battle intent, Wu Liang ancestor no longer had the courage to face Lin Dong in combat. The massive Azure Dragon in the distance began to shrink, and in the blink of an eye, it transformed into Lin Dong. Lin Dong gazed at Wu Liang ancestor, who was fleeing in panic. His face was expressionless. Lin Dong extended his palm toward the void in front of him. In an instant, a giant, devouring mouth opened wide, stretching across the void, its vast maw aimed directly at Wu Liang ancestor. Devouring ancestral talisman, devouring heaven and earth. Please spare me. I can do anything for you. Wu Liang ancestor's terrified voice echoed in the air. But Lin Dong remained unfazed, his palm descending, and the colossal devouring mouth swallowed Wu Liang ancestor before his screams could even escape. The entire world fell into a profound silence. A chill ran through everyone's heart as they realized how ruthless Lin Dong was, the breaker of dimensional shackles. Wu Liang ancestor, a 5th-grade Supreme who had cultivated for thousands of years, was utterly destroyed in the world, leaving no trace of his soul. Just as everyone shuddered at Lin Dong's actions, a massive water column erupted from the sea thousands of miles away. A staggering figure staggered out from the water, and when everyone saw who it was, their hearts trembled. Even Lin Dong, far in the distance, wore a solemn expression. It was none other than Wu Liang ancestor, who had been slain by Lin Dong just moments before. It's the Supreme Avatar. A thought flashed in Xiang Xiang's mind. What was destroyed earlier was just that old fool's Supreme Avatar. The Supreme Avatar is a technique similar to the Supreme Dharmakaya. Unlike the Supreme Dharmakaya, which possesses power equal to that of the practitioner, the Supreme Avatar only retains about 70% of the practitioner's strength. However, when the Supreme Avatar is harmed, the practitioner's own body does not suffer nearly as much damage. Wu Liang ancestor had used his Supreme Avatar to delay Lin Dong, while he himself escaped at lightning speed across the vast, unfathomable ocean. The crazed Wu Liang ancestor tore through the sky and vanished from sight in a few flickers. Lin Dong and the others, now realizing that chasing him down was impossible, could only watch as he disappeared. Damn! Lin Dong cursed loudly. Light radiated from his body, and a miniature divine palace flew out. It quickly expanded, forming a massive, magnificent temple, the Xiang Palace. With a mighty roar, a giant stone door in front of the temple slowly opened. Two graceful figures emerged from within, flying to Lin Dong's side. Qingtan looked at Lin Dong's grim face and furrowed her brow, while Ling Qingzhu remained silent. Did they do anything to you just now? Lin Dong asked. No, Ling Qingzhu replied, though a trace of discomfort flickered across her face. Lin Dong, noticing this subtle detail, raised an eyebrow slightly. Heh, Lin Dong, you're as reliable as always. Between heaven and earth, countless gazes were fixed on the battle that had already ended. Gradually, the vast crowd began to disperse, and within mere minutes, the sky, once teeming with figures, became eerily empty. All that remained was the vast land of ice and snow, surrounded by boiling seawater, with a massive imprint left by the Azure Dragon celestial seal, an enormous handprint stretching tens of thousands of feet across. Qingtan smiled at Lin Dong, then turned and pointed toward the distant horizon, where 5 figures could be seen. Brother Lin Dong, go greet them. Without their help, we wouldn't have lasted this long, Qingtan said, pointing toward Xiang Xiang and the others in the distance. As Qingtan spoke, the figures of Xiang Xiang and the others slowly flew toward them. Heh, no wonder you're the pride of the heavenly realm from a super dimension, Xiang Xiang said, looking at Lin Dong with a faint smile. Thank you all for your help earlier. May I know your names? If I ever have the chance, I will surely repay you in the future, Lin Dong said, cupping his hands as he looked at the black-clad youth. Xiang Xiang. Lin Dong, right? There's something I'd like to discuss with you. I wonder if you'd be interested? Xiang Xiang asked, his left hand resting behind him, while his right hand made a welcoming gesture toward Lin Dong. What is it? Lin Dong asked. As someone from a lower dimension, have you ever heard of the extraterritorial evil clan? Xiang Xiang asked, gazing at Lin Dong. Extraterritorial evil clan? That's the first time I've heard of it. However, the world I originally came from was invaded by a race from another dimension. They were an evil race called the Demon Clan, Lin Dong replied. Uncle Lu, Xiang Xiang called out to a man in black behind him after hearing Lin Dong's words. The man in black flipped his palm, and a jade slip appeared in his hand. The slip emitted a soft, radiant glow, transforming into a dark, misty light screen several yards wide in front of them. On the screen were dense, wriggling words that made one's heart tremble. Xiang Xiang's gaze scanned the screen rapidly, and after a few breaths, his eyes locked onto a line of text in the lower right corner. The Demon Clan, one of the 4,000 branches of the extraterritorial evil clan, ranks 433rd among the great demon clans. The clan leader, the alien demon emperor, possesses strength comparable to a second-grade supreme. During one of their invasions of a lower dimension, they were sealed by a powerful figure from the Great Thousand Worlds. After breaking the seal, they were slain by the lord of that dimension, causing the deaths of over half of the demon clan's forces. Xiang Xiang read aloud, his voice steady. He then turned his gaze back to Lin Dong. You are the lord of that dimension, aren't you? Xiang Xiang's words struck Lin Dong's mind like a bomb. He stood stunned, staring at Xiang Xiang in disbelief. Lin Dong never expected that the events in his own dimension, including the fact that he was the lord of that dimension, were so well known to this young man. Who exactly is this youth? What shocked Lin Dong even more was the realization that the Demon Clan, which had nearly destroyed his dimension, was merely one of the thousands of branches of the so-called extraterritorial evil clan.